The movement was begun by a scientist who discovered, quite by accident, these signals being sent. Please understand, they are safe as long as they are not discovered.
They want the weapon.
Look out for Charlie.
I want that son of a bitch dead. I want him dead.
So if you've been paying attention, a lot of these power stations are being quote-unquote attacked. It's very weird. One happened right around Christmas time. 2 guys were charged. Let's listen to what they say a little bit here.
Well, neither Jeremy Crahan nor Matthew Greenwood submitted a plea in court today. Both are facing charges of conspiracy to damage power facilities, with Greenwood facing an additional charge of possessing an unregistered firearm.
Okay, he mentions that he was arrested for possessing an unregistered firearm. They show photos of 2 guns all over the news. But these guys didn't use weapons at all to damage them. They were just jacking them up by hand, basically. And they were doing it not to damage the power grid, but to break into something else. It's a totally misleading story. But there's a point to this. Let's keep going for a minute.
There is a heightened concern, certainly in this area of the Northwest, to be on guard for these sorts of attacks.
Be on guard for these sorts of attacks. Now, there are more and more popping up. And I'm very, very concerned, and I'm very, very suspicious of what is going on and why they are doing this. And I think I know why. This is no different than when the pandemic started, and they started reporting that the 5 GBIS towers were being torched by people, and it was a big conspiracy. This is exactly what they're doing, and they're doing this to target this and what we talk about on this channel.
Jeremy Crahan and Matthew Greenwood appeared in a federal courthouse in Tacoma today to hear the charges against them for the first time. According to court documents, the motive was to cut power to burglarize businesses.
So they say it right there. The motive was to cut power to burglarize businesses, but they're saying the feds and everybody are watching out for this. Why would that be? So every time they want something to happen, they want to shut something down, they make big deals like this out of nothing. These were a couple guys that wanted to break into something, and they needed to shut the power off. No different than a burglar, an old school burglar, cutting the phone lines to get into a house because all the alarm systems ran on phone lines. It's no different. So these guys were doing that, and they're making it seem like this is a bunch of conspiracy theorists doing this kind of stuff. They purposely mention the guns. They purposely do all these different things that have nothing to do with the actual crime at all. Now listen to this part, it's very important.
Brown says the investigation is part of a national drive to focus on these types of incidents.
That's very concerning. A national drive to focus on these types of incidents. Very, very important. Now here comes the kicker. All at the same time. All these people got the same idea at the exact same time. Don't you think that's a little weird? All these things come in phases. Doesn't matter what it is. You had Herb Baumeister and Jeffrey Dahmer out in the gay bars murdering people at the exact same time during the exact same period, and then since then, poof, we're on to something else. Mass pew-pews, you know, the mass shooter thing. It always switches gears into something else. Now it's full speed. Power grid, power grid, power grid. What's going on with that?
The FBI is investigating a series of attacks on U.S. power grids after gunfire damaged 2 substations. Shots were also fired this week near an energy facility in South Carolina, and recent attacks were reported in Oregon and Washington State.
Now you don't have to get close to these grids to do something like that with a firearm. Now can you say operation? Say operation once. Operation. That is very concerning. Very, very concerning. This is happening everywhere. So as you know, I've talked about this a lot, about ELF and other frequencies riding on the power grid and into the house. I've talked about them pumping air gig and 5G onto the power grid and into your house. They plan on doing that, and then you won't be able to escape it because it's daisy chained. Every house is daisy-chained into the power grid. So this is a video that I did on the power grid a while back, where you can actually see it pulsing and hear it pulsing on the power grid while the power was off. So what this is gearing up for is just like the 5G towers being burned, the cell towers being burned. They are going to start claiming that it's conspiracy theorists that are doing this to the power grid. And then we won't be able to talk about this stuff anymore. This is what they do. Now, I've been talking about this for a long time, about the power grid and about how these frequencies ride on the power grid. And I want to clarify a few things, because after this started happening, I began getting a lot of comments saying, you say it's on the power grid, correct? And then people can be blamed for things. Things like that have been happening more and more since S-Hook and the whole Wolfgang Halbig thing that happened around that. This video is not too far reaching when you think about it. Just like they did with those towers. When they were doing those towers, those were operations. No one was out doing that. Nobody. But I want to take this time to explain what I mean about the power grid and what I mean about this signal. And this is what I tell everybody. And I'm not going to talk about this in depth again, I don't think. I'm just going to start pointing people to this video from now on. The signal is everywhere. If you look at this graphic, you can see that the signal is everywhere. There's ground wave, there's the ionosphere, there's a sky wave. It is everywhere. So no matter what, you are getting the signal, whether you are in the woods, whether you are at the park, whether you are at the gas station, it is everywhere, just like the Russian woodpecker. The Russian woodpecker was everywhere as well, and it would hop onto the power grid and ride it. So when you put the power grid in there, the power grid is just in the way of the signal. The signal hops on, it rides it, it comes right into your homes and up to your electronics. And the people that are very sensitive to this or sensitized, their symptoms are always stronger and more powerful, or at least different in their house than if they're in the middle of the woods somewhere. Always. So it doesn't matter what it is. It's not just the power grid. And I'm making this video because they are going to attempt to blame this on these kind of things and say that we are saying that it's just on the power grid. It's not just on the power grid. The power grid is just in the way. The Russian woodpecker did the exact same thing. So it doesn't matter if it's the power grid or the electrical system of your car. It is going to hit it and ride on it. It's like a radio station, a very long-range radio station. Doesn't matter where you are. It is only stronger in buildings because you are surrounded by the wiring. And now you have smart meters that are pumping dirty electricity fields into those buildings as well. And that's something that I wanted to talk about in the last video, and I didn't, about the human antenna. Is they're not telling you that this waste energy that they are talking about are the dirty electricity fields created by the smart meters. The old meters had filters on them that stopped this dirty electricity and these signals from coming into the home or the building. These smart meters do not have those filters intentionally so that they can pump this dirty electricity field into the home. And they use this for the appliances as well as many nefarious things. It's two-way. A smart meter is two-way, period. That's not a theory. So anyway, when you are surrounded by the wiring that is carrying these signals, it is going to be stronger. So it's not just the power grid. It's everywhere. The signal is everywhere. They're going to try to blame this on people like me to attempt to stop this from being talked about, because it's causing people to go out and do power grids, which is absolute bullshit. And it's crazy that they're doing this while admitting the human antenna. Check out my last video if you haven't seen it, that talks about them wanting to use human beings as an antenna to harness that dirty electricity and those RF signals that are coming off the power grid. This signal operates no different than the Russian woodpecker. No different. The Russian woodpecker was a 10 hertz signal, and it could be found anywhere and everywhere. I have documented this signal at 85,000 feet, underwater, out in the middle of the woods, in homes, in caves, everywhere. It operates exactly the same and gets into everything. If you don't know anything about the woodpecker, here's a very short piece on it.
Broadcast by a number of high-powered radio transmitters operating deep in the Soviet Union since July 4th, 1976. Though the official Defense Department explanation of the woodpecker is that it is an over-the-horizon radar designed to track U.S. missile launches, some scientists suspect that the woodpecker is designed to interfere with human brain function.
Designed to interfere with human brain function. When you were allowed to talk about this. When they started actually doing this from the U.S., you could not talk about it anymore.
As far as I'm concerned, the potential that this has for producing a direct psychoactive effect upon the total American population is there, has never been disproven.
Dr. Robert Becker is a pioneer in the field of bioeffects of electromagnetism.
The signal range within which the woodpecker operates is that which has been reported by many investigators to produce a tranquilizing effect upon animals.
We are just incredibly sensitive to these magnetic stimuli.
So when I tell you that it is hopping on the power grid and riding on it, it is not just the power grid. It is everywhere. The power grid is just in the way, and it's just hopping on and riding along and using it. You know, this isn't a beam. It's like a giant radio station. When you're driving a car along and listening to the radio station is not following you or being beamed to you. You are merely driving within the field. And everybody being affected by these signals just happens to be in the field. And the field is everywhere. Now, to prove my point, I went to one of these power station videos and watched it, one of these news articles that I showed you. And the comments are Fedpost comments, all the top comments. So if you read it, if this isn't domestic terrorism, I don't know what is. This is the world we live in. That's a strange comment right there. This is the new norm, is what they're saying. And then the next one says, there needs to be a huge deterrent set on this terrorism. These are not comments from people, from average people. Believe me. Then the third one, and it keeps going, but I'm just showing you three. The third one says, regardless of their intent, it should be considered an act of terrorism. All three comments are identical. Now they are gearing up to turn this into a big pile of shit and put the big flag on the top. And what they're going to do is they're going to say people were told by YouTube videos that there are frequencies on the power grid and they are going out there and taking them out. This is what they are going to do. This is what they are angling for right now. So be aware of it. They're going to try to take over the narrative and just say it's all on the power grid, because it's all or nothing with these people. They lie about what you say, they twist what you say, and they turn it into something else completely. And this is what they are going to do. They're not going to tell you the details. They are not going to say the details on the news. They're going to say that people out there on YouTube believe that there are bad signals on the power grid interfering with the human mind, and this is driving these people out there to go do this. And then people are going to fill in the gaps. Oh, so they're saying that the power company is in on it, you know, whatever, because that's what this is designed to do, make things look stupid when they are anything but stupid. People laughed about the human antenna for years. I actually had videos back then, years ago, called the human antenna that talked about this. All of it, for years. And now, they are fully admitting it, stating that they want to use people as antennas to power 6G. Because the body is pretty great at harvesting energy. Interesting, right? So this is what they're going to do. And they're going to do this so that you cannot criticize or talk about the power grid. Because if you do, you are promoting terrorism. These incidents with these power stations scream a couple operators in their car or one operator in their car driving around taking these places out with a weapon as well. Two birds with one stone, right? So be aware of it. That's it for now. Look out for Charlie.
Come on, do Nazi stuff.
Yeah, why won't he do the Nazi stuff?
Look out for Charlie.